Hey y'all, welcome back to another video. Today we are talking about just a wonderful, beautiful piece of camera equipment. We're talking about the Arri Alexa 35. I have to give the most massive shout out to DJ who runs South City Rentals, a local camera rental shop in Birmingham. He ordered the Alexa 35 basically as soon as it came out, as soon as it was announced, and a few months later, he messaged me and asked if I would want to come and play with the camera and maybe make a YouTube video about it. Of course, I was like, yes, 1000% I would love to play with your $80,000 camera. Please, thank you. Literally couldn't have done it without you. But with that said, in this video, I'm gonna quickly cover the specs of the camera. I have some test footage to show y'all. And then I just wanna give you my honest opinion and tell you as a DP cinematographer why I love this camera and why I truly think it's worth the hype, worth the price tag, and worth the Arri name. And at the end, if I could think of anything negative to say about this camera, I'll let you know. Okay, so let's knock out the specs and then we'll get on to the more fun stuff. This camera can shoot up to 120 frames per second at 4K. It boasts 17 stops of dynamic range, and when Arri says 17 stops, they mean 17 stops. There are probably 100 other technical specs I could talk about, but honestly, that's not really what Arri cameras are about, and that's not really what this video is about. We will get a little bit more into the specs, but I want to save those for like the usability and the real world usage, the part that gets me super hype about this camera. So let's check out the test footage. I put a little sequence together, and then with that context, I'll talk about why I just freaking loved shooting with this camera.
Highly gifted, my jacket's thrifted. Watch me get a pattern shifted, just acting different. Living in my minutes, I'm catalytic. That's why they love to jack the style like it's on a Civic. I will never pull the strings like an oligarch. I do my dance at the club with the lonely hearts, watching all these little men try and be Bonapartes and make the rest of us deal with their broken parts. Despite evil, I like people. Put your hands in the air if you're bipedal. Yeah, if life is a film, give me 5 sequels. Trying to pull my thread through the plot like a fine needle. All of these lines equal proof that I live alone. Got the benefit of time to deliver flows. Eating creamy peanut butter, buddy, I lick the bowl. Brings my soul body into the physical. New cards, new deck, new life. King of Cups, he comes up right. Always, all days, all nights, see. Do I. New cards, new deck, new life. King of Cups, he comes up right. Always, all days, all nights.
Watching the footage back reminds me how just good it was to shoot with this camera. It was just so easy to use. The only word I can think of is I felt extremely empowered when I was using this camera. I felt like I could shoot anything. I felt like I had no limits, and any limits that I did have were my limits. They weren't the camera's limits. Anything that was stopping me from getting a shot was my creative limits, or of course like the circumstances of the day. But having this camera in my hand, and massive shout out to DJ for offering to let me use the Easy Rig, because obviously it's a very large camera. Okay, first 30 seconds, it's heavy. That's all. So having this camera and the Easy Rig, it's just kind of floating by my side. Y'all, I felt like I could film anything and it would look good. So let's talk about what this camera has specifically that made me feel that way. Number one, I'm gonna say it again, of course, the 17 stops of dynamic range. I felt like anything I pointed the camera out was gonna have a good amount of contrast, but also detail in the highlights, detail in the shadows. I mean, detail everywhere. And you can see from some of these shots, like some of this was overcast, but for the most part, that sun was just kind of blasting. Of course, on a commercial shoot or on a narrative shoot or like an actual film set, I would want diffusion and lights and all of that stuff. I'm not saying that this is a docu-style camera. Granted, it could be, but I digress. The dynamic range is insane, and alongside with that, and this goes for pretty much any Arri camera, alongside the dynamic range, the color science. At this point, that's what separates cameras for me. Of course, I want a camera that can shoot 4K or that can shoot high frame rates. But honestly, the reason I'm in love with Red, or the reason I'm in love with Arri over a Sony or over a Canon, it's all color science. It's all the like you see the image and it just has depth and thickness and really good colors and really good skin tones. So yes, everything I was pointing my camera at while I was shooting, I just felt empowered by that dynamic range and the color reproduction that I knew the camera had. So number 3 is the ergonomics of the camera itself. This camera is extremely simple. So you have 6 custom buttons on one side and 3 on the other side, and DJ had these mapped perfectly. If I remember right, DJ had it set up where 1 was lower ND, 3 was more ND, so they're kind of just like, you know, you want less ND, you want more ND, and then right next to that for 2 and 4, it was lower ISO, higher ISO. So that made it super easy to make sure my exposure was good. Basically, and this was the heaven I was living in. Easy rigs on, holding most of the weight of the camera. DJ's got it rigged out all nice. I'm filming, he has the electronic viewfinder, so I would be like in the electronic viewfinder, hit my false color, something looks blown out or too dark or whatever, then I just reach over, less ND, more ND, less ISO, more ISO, and I'm ready. Like, that's what I'm talking about. It just felt good. I don't know how else to talk about this camera besides saying it just felt good. So that's kind of ergonomics in the physical build of the camera. It also has a menu on the side and a little scroll wheel for all your other settings. All of those settings are also easily accessible from the flip out screen. And with that said, let's jump into the menu system. We're not really jumping in, I'm just here to tell you it's super simple. And I love that. That's all. All right, I'm looking at my outline and I knew I would cover these things just by getting excited, but just to make sure I've stated them as reasons I love the camera. The false color custom button on the screen, the internal NDs. I just love internal NDs and the way that they were set up. So easy to use. And I know I mentioned it a little bit, but the electronic viewfinder was insane. Like I said, we were shooting outside, the sun was blasting, and for a while I was just looking at the screen and DJ was like, hey, have you used the viewfinder yet? I was like, no, I forgot. And he had it on this little articulating arm, and of course, any camera can have one of those. I'm just saying the way it was built really added to the experience because I could just be in that world, you know, viewfinding electronically. The sun was not affecting my shot, my exposure, whatever. It's just a good little time. Also, let's just pause and say shout out to DJ because he was letting us use all of this gear for free, basically acting as my first AC because whenever I needed the electronic viewfinder moved into like a perfect position, he would come and do that, whatever. And he was also shooting B-roll for this YouTube video. So almost all the B-roll you see, DJ was shooting and he just offered to do that. So you're the best, dude. Thank you. But yeah, the electronic viewfinder was a game changer. And that's kind of all I have to say on that note. I know I rambled a little bit. I'm sorry, I got excited, but all of those pieces, all of those factors coming together just, again, made me feel empowered as a cinematographer, as a DP. That's such a good feeling to have a camera kit, know that everything on it is working perfectly, everything on it is working intuitively. It's a very intuitive camera. Even though I've never used an Arri camera before, I've never shot on the Alexa Mini or any of the other Alexa cameras, the camera is so intuitive that after like 3 or 4 minutes, I was like, oh yeah, I got this, no big deal. I will definitely be renting one for the next project. That gives me the budget to be able to rent one because I could not imagine like having a full commercial shot list with a lighting team and everything. We would be zooming with this camera. I don't really have any negatives about this camera, but I'm also not like a high level commercial or filmmaking DP that's using these cameras every day. Somebody that uses cinema cameras a ton, I'm sure could find, you know, little things that they've come to love in other cameras that this camera doesn't have. But I don't know, I'm rambling. Y'all, that's all I have for you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, thank you to DJ for letting us use your stuff for free and filming B-roll and being so gracious. Yeah, people are cool. All right, but that's all I have for y'all today. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like down below. If you have any questions about this camera or other cinema cameras, drop them down below. I'd love to chat. I like to talk about cameras. It's a good time. If not, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next week.